15 false friends between English and Romance languages. That's Catalan, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, and Spanish. Okay, let's start with the word actually. Actually doesn't mean currently or at present. Actually means in fact. For example, are you Scottish? No, I'm actually Irish, but I'm currently living in Scotland. That means, no, in fact, I'm Irish, but at present, I'm living in Scotland. Okay, let's look at the next word, which is assist. Assist doesn't mean attend or go to. Assist means help. For example, this program assists children who cannot attend school due to learning difficulties. This means that this program helps children who cannot go to school due to learning difficulties. The next word is assume. The common usage of assume in English is a synonym for presume, imagine. We also use assume to mean accept, as in Romance languages, but that's a less common usage. So we can have a sentence like, I assume that no one has assumed responsibility for this mistake. This means, I presume that no one has accepted responsibility for this mistake. Okay, our next word is discuss. Discuss doesn't mean debate or argue for and against. Discuss simply means talk about. For example, can we just discuss what to offer our guests for dinner rather than debate the pros and cons of vegetarianism? This means, can we just talk about what to offer our guests for dinner rather than argue for and against vegetarianism? Okay, look at the next word, which is educated. Educated does not mean well-mannered or polite. Educated means schooled. For example, he might be well-educated, but he's certainly not very well-mannered. This means he might have had a good education, but he's certainly not very polite. Let's look at this word, eventually. Eventually doesn't mean possibly or maybe. Eventually means finally. For example, after a lot of thinking, I eventually decided that it was possibly better to reject their offer. After a lot of thinking, I finally decided that it was maybe better to reject their offer. Our next word is fabric. Fabric doesn't mean factory or plant. In English, fabric means cloth. For example, this type of cotton fabric used to be made in factories in the north of England. This type of cotton cloth used to be made in plants in the north of England. Okay, let's look at a lecture. A lecture is not the reading of a text. A lecture is an informative talk. After listening to the professor's lecture on English literature, I realized that I had to catch up on my reading of classic novels. Okay, let's look at the word parents. In English, parents are not your relatives or family members. Your parents are simply your mother and father. For example, as both my parents are Welsh, I still have many relatives in Wales. This means, as both my mum and dad are Welsh, I still have siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins in Wales. The next word is to present. Be careful that to present is not the same as to introduce. We present information and we introduce a person. For example, before presenting our construction project, I'd like to introduce you to two of my colleagues. Okay, let's look at the word pretend. Pretend doesn't mean intend or want. In English, pretend is to make believe. For example, every time she pretends that she intends to leave him, he buys her expensive jewelry. Every time she makes him believe that she wants to leave him, he buys her expensive jewelry. The next word is library. Library is different from a bookshop. A library is where you read or borrow books, whereas a bookshop is where you buy books. For example, as the library didn't have the book I wanted to borrow, I had to go into a bookshop and buy it. The next word is realize. To realize is to understand, that's the common usage of it, and we occasionally use realize to mean achieve, that's a less common usage, which is similar to the Romance language word. For example, he finally realized that if he were to realize his goal, he would need to work harder. This means that he finally understood that if he were to achieve his goal, he would need to work harder. Let's look at the word sensible. Sensible doesn't mean sensitive or delicate. Sensible means wise. For example, when you know someone is very sensitive, the most sensible thing to do is not to criticize them harshly. When you know someone is very delicate, the wisest thing to do is not to criticize them harshly. Okay, and finally, let's look at the word support. Support doesn't mean to tolerate or bear. Support means back. Although I fully support his ideas, I cannot tolerate his angry public speeches. This means that although I fully back his ideas, I cannot bear his angry public speeches. Okay, that's the end of the lesson. Let's do an exercise. I want you to find the vocabulary mistake and correct it. For example, here we have the sentence, this library doesn't sell the type of book I'm looking for. Library is not where you buy a book, so you should use the word bookshop. This bookshop doesn't sell the type of book I'm looking for. Okay, number 1. I cannot support the way she treats her students. You need to change support to tolerate. I cannot tolerate the way she treats her students. Number 2. Some of my parents are coming to visit us next week. The word to change here is parents, and the word you want is relatives. Some of my relatives are coming to visit us next week. Number 3. May I present myself? My name is Barbara Hale. For a person, you need to use introduce, not present. May I introduce myself? Number 4. He is very upset and therefore rather sensible at the moment. Sensible means wise. You want the word sensitive. He is very upset and therefore rather sensitive at the moment. Number 5. I'm not sure what to do. Eventually we can sell the car. Eventually means finally. The word you want here is maybe or possibly. I'm not sure what to do. Maybe we can sell the car. Number 6. He is the most charming, well-educated 7-year-old I've ever met. Well-educated doesn't mean polite or well-mannered. That's the word you want here. He's the most charming, well-mannered 7-year-old I've ever met. Number 7. He's actually in a meeting. He should be free in an hour. Actually means in fact. You want the word currently here. He's currently in a meeting. He should be free in an hour. Number 8. This is the best workshop I've assisted this week. Assist is to help. The word you're looking for is attended. This is the best workshop I've attended this week. Number 9. In the last 2 years, 3 fabrics in my town have closed down. A fabric is a cloth. You want the word factory. In the last 2 years, 3 factories in my town have closed down. And finally, not to make believe, but intends. She's a great mom and intends to give her son all the support he needs.